The Roman Empire in 200 AD was the largest, wealthiest, and most administratively sophisticated state in the ancient world. It was also the most dangerous job market in human history for the people running it. Of the 16 emperors who held the throne in the 100 years between 180 and 280 AD, only 3 passed away of natural causes. To survive on the throne, let alone succeed, required a specific psychological profile that the modern world has largely forgotten existed. Here are 7 signs that profile still lives in you. Sign 1. You cannot sit still indoors. The Roman emperors of 200 AD were not throne room rulers. They were field commanders who happened to also run a continent-spanning bureaucracy. Septimius Severus, the emperor in 200 AD, spent 17 of his 18 years on campaign. He passed away at York in northern Britain in 211, on the frontier, in a tent, after a winter campaign against the Caledonian tribes. He had not seen Rome in years. Marcus Aurelius, his immediate predecessor in the Antonine dynasty, wrote his Meditations, one of the foundational works of Stoic philosophy. The pattern is consistent across the entire imperial period. The successful emperors were the ones who could not stop moving. The ones who tried to govern from comfort, commodus eligabilis, were removed within years. If you become physically restless within weeks of staying in one place, sign 1 applies. Sign 2. You can buy loyalty without sentimentality. The famous incident of 193 AD perfectly captures the psychology required. The Praetorian Guard, after the removal of Emperor Pertinax, literally auctioned the throne to the highest bidder. A wealthy senator named Didius Julianus won by promising each guard 25,000 sesterces. He lasted 66 days before Septimius Severus marched on Rome and removed him. The first thing Severus did upon taking power was issue a donative, a cash gift to every soldier in the army, of 250 gold auri per soldier. He repeated this gesture before every major campaign of his reign. His final words to his sons Caracalla and Geta were recorded by the historian Cassius Dio. Be harmonious, enrich the soldiers, scorn all others. That was the operating manual. Loyalty in the Roman army was a currency, not a feeling. If you can purchase commitment from people without feeling cheapened by it, sign 2 applies. Sign 3. You'd be willing to remove your own brother to stabilize the succession. Septimius Severus left the empire jointly to his 2 sons, Caracalla and Geta. Within 9 months, Caracalla had Geta removed permanently. The historian Cassius Dio, who was present at the imperial court, recorded the loss took place in the imperial palace. Caracalla then issued a damnatio memoriae, an order erasing Geta's name and image from every monument across the empire. He paid the army an enormous donative the next morning to ensure their support. He ruled for 6 more years before being removed himself by one of his own bodyguards. The fratricide was not personal failure. It was systemic policy. A Roman dynasty with 2 sons of equal claim was a dynasty that produced civil war within a decade. The brothers who refused to do what Caracalla did produced more chaos through their hesitation than through their absence. If you could perform calculated harm against someone close to you to prevent a much larger harm later, sign 3 applies. Sign 4. You can change cultures mid-sentence. Septimius Severus was born in Leptis Magna in modern Libya. His native language was Punic. He learned Latin as a teenager and never lost his accent. His wife Julia Domna was Syrian, from the priestly family of the Temple of Elagabal in Emesa. Their children were raised in a court that conducted business in Latin, philosophy in Greek, religion in Syriac and Latin. Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations entirely in Greek, the prestige intellectual language of the educated elite. Hadrian, a generation earlier, had been so culturally Greek, the Romans nicknamed him Graculus, the Little Greek. The emperors of 200 AD did not run a single culture. They ran a federation of cultures. The ones who could not adapt fluidly were removed by people whose subtleties they had failed to read. If you naturally adjust your register, manner, and approach, depending on who you are with, and you do this without feeling fake, sign 5. You take every threat personally, but you never act personally. The Roman emperor's response to threats was almost never immediate. Successful emperors planned responses the way other people plan dinner parties, meticulously over years with attention to reciprocal social cost. Septimius Severus took 8 years to systematically deal with every senator who had supported his rivals during the civil wars of the 1900s. He tracked them, watched them, attended their dinners, married their daughters, then handled them one at a time. The behavioral pattern is consistent across the more competent emperors. They felt slights deeply. They acted on slights coldly. They never confused the feeling with the action. The emperors who acted hot, Commodus chasing his perceived enemies through public games, produced the fastest endings of their own reign. The ones who logged everything and acted on a 5-year delay tended to pass away in their beds. If you can hold a grievance for years without showing it, and execute the response with the cleanness of a stranger, sign 5 applies. Sign 6. You're comfortable being treated as divine. Roman emperors of 200 AD were not just rulers, they were nodes in the imperial cult. Living emperors received offerings, prayers, and statues. Departed emperors were formally deified by senatorial vote. Caracalla wore a copy of Alexander the Great's armor, and publicly claimed Alexander's soul had transmigrated into his body. Elagabalus, his successor twice removed, claimed personal incarnation of the Syrian sun god, whose name he took. None of this was metaphor. It was state religion. The successful emperors handled the divinity comfortably. They walked into rooms expecting reverence. They accepted offerings without embarrassment. The ones who could not handle the divinity often went mad inside it. The trick was to accept the divine role as a job description, not a personal identity. If you walk into rooms expecting people to look at you first and you handle the attention without distortion, sign 6 applies. Sign 7. You expect to be removed by someone who loves you. This is the hardest sign to identify in yourself because most modern people have never had to live with it. The Roman emperor of 200 AD did. The statistical reality of the office was that the person who would eventually end the emperor's rule was almost certainly someone he saw daily. The threat never came from outside. It always came from inside the trust circle. The successful emperors built their psychology around this fact. They did not develop paranoid suspicion that paralyzed daily relationships. They developed something stranger, a kind of warm operational distance from everyone they loved. They could embrace a son and simultaneously assume he might be the one who finally did it. The successful emperor did not stop trusting. He just trusted with full awareness of the conditional. The only Roman emperor in 300 years to abdicate voluntarily. All of them lived their entire reign with the knowledge that the threat was somewhere in the room, attached to a hand they had chosen. They simply did not let the knowledge stop them from running an empire. If you instinctively prepare for betrayal from people you genuinely love, and you do this without becoming bitter or cold, sign 7 applies, and you carry the rarest psychological wiring on this list. How many signs apply to you? 3 or fewer is normal. 4 or 5 is unusual. 6 or 7 is the wiring that produced Septimius Severus, Marcus Aurelius, and the handful of other emperors of 200 AD who passed away on their own terms instead of someone else's. The men who held the Roman throne in 200 AD did not survive on intelligence alone. They survived on a specific psychological profile. Most modern people will never recognize themselves in the list. The few who do are not made for the office economy or the dating app. They were made for a job that no longer exists. The throne is gone. The wiring is not. If you watch this far, the channel's all ready for you. Subscribe. I publish these every week.